And welcome back. This is your man Warrior. This is another patron roster review, and this is Coookie661. Coookie661 is from Boba's Berserkers, and Coookie661 is mostly free to play. When I say mostly free to play, I mean it's not a consistent investment every single month. It's just a tiny bit here and a tiny bit there. Very, very little, in fact. I've been playing for about 8 months, and when you see the roster, you'll see after 8 months, this is about the average development for an 8-month shard. Cookie really wants to know about Arena, Fleet, and kind of a into Phase 2 or Phase 3 Heroic AAT teams. Kind of has an idea of Phase 2 now, which I believe is the Resistance, but wants to kind of get a Phase 3 team going. Very young, so very few characters are developed, so this is going to be a challenge, but we've got some ideas for you. So you're in a young shard. What that means is that not a lot of people on your leaderboard are going to have any speed mods or any very good speed secondary mods. It takes a lot of time. It takes over a year and a half, 2 years even. I've been playing for 2 years, and I still have, you know, subpar mods compared to half of my leaderboard. It takes a lot of time focusing on speed mods to really get good ones. But so you need to know this though about your arena, because that should influence what teams you build and how you build your teams. Because you're in a young leaderboard, the arena team that you're running, the one you have running now, you said you were going to switch it and you were thinking of going to a possible Jedi Ray team or a possible like CLS led team. And I'm going to sway you actually away from a Jedi Ray team. And the reason for that is she and her BB-8 and R2-D2 really need superior mods to the individuals that are on your leaderboard. You really need to have equal or greater than mods than everybody that's in the top 10, or you're going to struggle. Now, if you're out of the top, 100, then mods become a little bit less important. You can build certain team comps that can climb pretty efficiently. However, I got a team for you. Let's get right into it. When looking at your characters, the first two you see is R2-D2 and Commander Luke Skywalker, and I know Commander Luke is someone you just unlocked, so you're pretty excited about that. So it would be actually a CLS lead with R2-D2. Now you've got to surround them with some good characters, and the best tank that you have is in fact Old Ben. Old Ben is an excellent tank. He brings a lot to the table. You have him at gear 9. You're definitely going to need Old Ben higher. You just need a little bit more durability from him to keep your whole team alive. It is okay if he dies, but you still want him to survive to a certain point to allow characters such as Han Solo and CLS to do the damage that they need to do before Old Ben croaks. Also, when I was scrolling down and looking at your individuals, the next two for Arena that I see that are absolute nuggets of gold is your Han Solo in the middle left, and in the very middle, Grand Admiral Thrawn. Both are 5 stars, and they're both viable at 5 stars. Your Grand Admiral Thrawn you just unlocked recently, and you only have to like gear 3, and Han Solo is at gear 7. These two individuals need to become your number 1 and number 2 priorities. Thrawn and Han Solo are absolutely overpowered in this game, and you are doing yourself a disservice by not having them completely and utterly maxed out. If they're not in your favorites, we have a problem. So hopefully these two guys are in your favorites, and if they're not, immediately tag them for their favorites and start actively developing the two of them. When you get them to about gear 10, I know that's a lot of work, but when you get them to gear 10, you could effectively switch out to this new team with CLS, R2-D2, Old Ben, Han, and Thrawn. However, before that, before you get Han and Thrawn, and you could do CLS, R2-D2, Old Ben with Biggs and Wedge. I know that you have a gear 10 Wedge and a gear 11 Biggs, or you could do Biggs and Princess Leia, but really Biggs and Wedge have more synergy together. So in the meantime, you could still put in CLS, R2-D2, Old Ben, and then until you have Han Solo and Thrawn ready to go, use what you have, right? Let's move on to Fleet. And then one last note is the reason why I'm suggesting you not do the raid team is because you don't have BB-8. Without BB-8, the raid team really isn't a team at all. And you don't have superior mods to everybody on your leaderboard. And so I really wouldn't go that direction. As far as Fleet, let's move on to Fleet. For Fleet, you have the Executrix, which is great. You're using Biggs ship and the Umbaran and the Imperial TIE Fighter, and you're using the TIE Advanced, and then you're using the First Order TIE Pilot. or at least that's what you should be using. I know you've got Wedge in there, and the whole lineup looks amazing, except for I would pull Wedge for the First Order TIE Pilot. Now, your First Order TIE Pilot probably could be put in for Wedge at this very moment. However, you definitely need to gear up your character and you want to star up the ship. This is a relatively easy ship to farm, by the way. You can get it out of the Galactic War store, which is one of the best currencies you get a lot of every single day. And you should be able to finish the entire Galactic War by now with the lineup that you have every single day. So you should have plenty of currency for this, but you want to continue to develop all of your pilots. So the lineup that you have, basically just take out Wedge and then put in the First Order TIE Pilot. And I know a lot of people are like, why would I want to do that? What's so special about the First Order TIE Pilot? Aside from the fact that he has a double tap potential on his basic, he has a basic possibility of putting target lock down twice. If he misses the first time, he has a possibility of shooting a second time and target locking on that second time. So he's a target lock fiend, and you really need that in this team, which Wedge does not bring to the table. The second thing is he does a ridiculous amount of damage with strafe, and that damage can be done over and over and over, provided the opposing team is target locked, which is the theory of this team. And Wedge does do damage, but it's really high damage dependent on target lock. And I know he's a great ship for you because of your development of Wedge, but he's just a character or a ship that I would put into your backup lineup. I don't say get rid of him. I would just say put it into your backup. I would do Scimitar in your backup, then Slave 1, and then Wedge, the Scimitar to come in, and then Slave 1 and then Wedge. Those would be the three I'd have in your backup for now. And again, remember, every single ship I suggested, your pilots are going to have to be put into favorites and passively geared continually. You want to continue to develop them. You can't neglect them. You have to develop them. Now, you may have some higher priorities over the pilots, like your main arena team, because your main arena team can earn you more crystals than your current fleet can. So you definitely want to prioritize gearing arena, then gearing your fleet pilots. As far as phase 2, you already mentioned you're probably going to be working on resistance for that. So your resistance looks very well for phase 2. As far as phase 3, there's a couple of teams that I can suggest. One is going to be an old school kind of Emperor Palpatine led team, and the other would be kind of a Rebels team. So let's look at the first team that's kind of a team that people know about. So the first team that a lot of people know about is Emperor Palpatine as the leader, and then they run a TIE Fighter pilot underneath with 3 tanks. And your 3 tanks could be, you know, Royal Guards, Stormtrooper Han, and Old Ben. You have 7 stars on all 3 of those characters, and so you could continue to develop Royal Guards, Stormtrooper Han, and Old Ben, and just put a ton of protection on all 3 of them, and you'd be probably fine. Now, your TIE Fighter pilot, easily farmed, but is only 4 stars. So for this team that I'm suggesting, where you're going to get, you know, anywhere from 100k to 500k, depending upon how, you know, high your gear is on these characters, you really need the TIE Fighter pilot really leveled up as high as possible. This is a 2 birds 1 stone situation as well, because the TIE Fighter pilot is in your main lineup in ships, right? So you're not going to waste any gear on this character. It's going to help you in both the fleet arena, and it's going to help you in this situation with this. So you got to get him to 7 stars for this to even be a thing in phase 3. The other phase 3 team that I'm going to suggest actually comes out of Rebels, and it's going to be all Rebels. And this team, you could kind of start at the end of phase 3 and then trail into phase 4. It does very, very well in phase 4, so you could kind of cut some of phase 3 and then finish, you know, into phase 4 and get quite a bit of damage. When people do that, by the way, when they go from one phase to another, the reason why they get more damage is because there's countdown timers, and once the countdown timer's over, you're dead. The guy will kill you, right? So when you start at the end of a phase, what you're doing is you're setting yourself up to finish that phase before the countdown timer happens, and that gives you all that damage, and then you go into the next phase, and then you get those countdown timers. So one team gets to do basically go through 2 of the countdown timers, the 15-turn countdown timers, and it basically effectually gives one team 30 rounds instead of 15 rounds. So you got to time it right. You got to see how much damage a team can do before the timer, so that way you can get through. And if you realize, you know, start low, start at like, you know, 10% of phase 3, and if you finish it off real easily, then you know you can go to 15% or 20% of phase 3. It just keeps stretching that phase 3 section, and then you'll go through phase 3 and you'll play into phase 4, and you'll get better and better at phase 4 as well. So that's it. But the team that I would suggest is going to be a CLS-led team. And you can use Akbar. You do have Akbar 7 stars, but I really would sway away from that for now. I would do a CLS-led team with R2-D2. Again, those are the top 2 characters. They're going to be in your arena team as well. And then your Princess Leia is right up there as well. Princess Leia, and then your Biggs and your Wedge. So basically, your entire top row of Rebels minus Lando Calrissian. And so this team with Biggs and Wedge, they're going to do massive damage. Leia stealthing, do massive damage. R2-D2 stealthing, of course, which is going to help Princess Leia and Commander Luke Skywalker. You could put Wedge in the lead, and you're going to get some turn meter gain to make your team faster, a little bit of extra damage, and some healing. But Commander Luke will give your extra damage and also give you the retribution, which gives you more damage. So you'll have to decide whether you want to run Wedge lead or Commander Luke. Run them both ways and see which way you playing it gets you more damage. If you get more damage with a Wedge lead, then do that. If you don't, then run Commander Luke. But for now, this phase 3 team is way more viable, and it's instantaneously playable because your other team, your TIE Fighter pilot, is not available. So this is what I would do. So Coookie661 from Boba's Berserkers. I hope this helps with your arena. You know, really taking the jump. Go to CLS R2-D2 Old Ben, and then you've got to start working on your Han Solo and Thrawn. But for now, you could use your Wedge and your Biggs. You don't have BB-8s, so you're going to want to start passively working on your First Order. And when I say passively, I mean get the stars. Don't worry about the gear as much right now. Worry about the stars. Worry about farming those characters, specifically the First Order TIE Pilot. He's going to help you in arena, ship's arena, and then also the First Order Stormtrooper. He is very difficult to get, takes a very long time. That way you can get him. You do want BB-8, I promise you that. So continue to work on those character star levels. Continue to gear your arena and continue to gear your pilots for Fleet Arena, and then work on these 2 teams. Continue to develop your Resistance and that Rebels team that I mentioned. As always, if anyone has any suggestions, leave them in the comments down below, and keep your gaming on. Warrior out.